again, welcome everyone. Thank you so much for joining this call today. This is first of our 5 webinars, which will be running for the 45-day challenge. And you know Peadar already. If you don't know, he's been the pioneer of the local challenge as well as the 45-day challenge. So he's supported us through TUS Works, and he's the mentor for this particular challenge. And this side quests for 45 days, we've conducted just because you have created a lot of value in these 48 hours. We were discussing at the start of this call with Marcel that in 48 hours you created an open source project, and it like you know this already. You're sitting in this call because you created value, and it was something unbelievable that happened on that weekend in a small amount of time with a collaborative effort and a lot of iterations with feedback from mentors, and a lot of channelization of energy happened that weekend, and you created something significant. And 45 days is a longer period of time, and there's a lot which can come out of it. uh, Commercialization is that one pillar where we promote it, of course, because there's a lot of value which it can give back to the society if it's something commercial and it's impactful. And other than just making a startup out of it, you can also think of research ideas which can or any other ideas which you have. But 45 days is a significant amount of time to do something better than what you ended at 48 hours with. So these 5 webinars, this is again Peadar conducts this. So question, there's a question, 1 second. Are you able to work on both the global and local challenge? I think I'll leave this answer for Peadar, but it totally depends how much time you can give to both and what you can do out of it.
Yeah.
It's Yep. Peadar, you want to add something here?
Well, I suppose we can come to it later. This is mainly focused on the global challenge, but the local challenge, I see it's from Kathy. Yeah, I mean, I will work on both of them. This webinar, I mean, the approach we will have on both of them will be the same, but I'll explain in a second anyway with the slides.
Yep. So I'll let you carry on, Peadar. The floor is all yours. So again, thanks a lot everyone for joining, and we'll just be looking forward to a little bit more communication on this 45-day challenge. So we'll send out a few mails, and yeah, just to repeat myself again, this is recorded and this will be posted on YouTube for your friends to check out, whoever is not on the call right now. So Peadar, if you want to share your screen, you can start with this.
Okay, I'm just gonna find the right screen I have here. You see this, guys?
Yep, it's visible, Peadar.
Okay. Okay, so
Yep, all good.
welcome everybody, and I think I've met some of you already, and if you haven't met me, my name is Peadar Casey. I work within TUS, and I work on a program called TUS Works, which is, as you can see here, it's a Government of Ireland initiative, but it's a European Union initiative. And I'll explain in a second how I ended up meeting Sahir here. But the main objective on this for me is to nurture an ecosystem. And we'll talk a little bit more about this, but so I know some of you already have had some questions about what's included and what's not included. The way I'm approaching it at the moment is we're at the start of something. So everything is included until we decide and we all make a decision there's something is excluded. So that's just to start with. And I'll come back in a second. I suppose it's important that you understand that, you know, when you're developing a product or when you're developing an idea. I mean, I was at the hackathon. I'm not a seasoned hackathon participant, but I've been at a number of them already. And what I saw last weekend was incredibly encouraging for the ecosystem that we have that's connected to Hackathon, thanks to Sahir and his team, and then indirectly connected to TU's works because this, when I met Sahir, there was two requests. One was how could we localize the energy in the competition? So we've done that. And the second one was how could we extend the engagement to try and do something and shape something with the outputs from 48 hours and do something with them in 45 days. So just so you know, I'm not coming from a technical background and I'm not coming from a science background. So what I talk to you about is going to be around business modeling. And, this is very much linked to the idea of the energy and the enthusiasm of technology needs to be converted into more stuff that can be of benefit to society. And I think that was what was being asked for by NASA, but it was definitely what was being asked for in a local challenge. So behind this, that's my agenda in that, business modeling, you've seen this before, maybe is a verb. It needs movement. The overall objective here is that over the next 5 weeks, we get somewhere. And that somewhere means that you shape what you have. And the best way to shape what you have is ask questions. Ask me questions, ask Sahir questions. And I'm going to be asking you guys questions. And you'll see some of them in a second, because when you start to ask questions of each other, you begin to realize, okay, what's the picture that we would like to paint? Where are the places that we'd like to fill in? What does the jigsaw look like? And then we start putting the pieces together. So I think be realistic in what we can do in 5 weeks. I don't have any intention of disappearing off the face of the earth in 5 weeks. So just because we're finished in 5 weeks' time or in 6 weeks' time with a demonstration day doesn't mean that you don't have access to me or these discussions. My intention on this is to make sure that we anchor some of the energy that was around in the 48 hours of the hackathon and get it into our ecosystem and start working from there. So I suppose I have a model that I've started to use. And if you have any questions as we're going along, stop me. But at the end, you can ask questions or put them into the chat even. But I developed this model since coming to TUS because my time has been focused very much around researchers and students and how do you get, more of an enterprise environment or more of an enterprise understanding. And the first thing you have to do is recognize that everyone is indifferent. Everyone has their own ambition. And that's why this stage number 1 is so important. And you'll hear me talking about it in detail tonight, but you'll keep hearing me going back to it and referring back to it. And the reason I'm saying this to you is because if you don't know why you're doing something, it's a bit like, if I asked you where did you want to go, if you don't know where you want to go, it's very difficult for me to take you to some place. It's like getting a taxi, and if they ask you where do you want to go and you don't know, well, it's very difficult to have a taxi driver to try and guess where you want. At best, you go nowhere. At worst, you end up someplace you never wanted to be. So very quickly, the 5 M's that I've here, yourself, the me is self-reflection. Why are you doing what you're doing? And that ties in then to connecting with like-minded stakeholders, because it's very important. Remember now what I'm talking to you about is about, okay, it's about commercial, but it's also about if you're doing something, even if somebody already mentioned about the idea of something being for research, and even if all of this is just as a very simple way of it add value to your CV, wherever you're going with it, it's important to understand how you can blend it in to other people's agendas, because that's how you end up connecting with your own tribe. That's how you end up creating value for people that see value in the same things as you do. And sometimes that means that they give you a job. Sometimes that means that you get funding to do research. And sometimes that means that you get funding to set up a startup and you go and build a successful business. Third phase of this one here is about, making the thing happen. And believe it or not, sometimes what happens is people go too quickly into how to make it happen without understanding actually what they want to make happen. And okay, you've come off the back of either a NASA challenge statement or a request for you to create a local challenge statement. But now you have to get a new reference point, which is, your own ambition, but also what you see in the landscape and what you think there's an opportunity. And then we'll talk a little bit again over the following weeks. We'll go into detail on each week around what does the market look like and what is marketing. First of all, so again, I suppose go back and say, finding your North Star, find your tribe. When you're looking at trying to make something happen, think of it in the terms of tapas, start with small pieces. What's the smallest thing that you can do with your idea that will make the biggest difference? And these are the type of things where you introduce it to people. And I know some of you online already will have experienced some of this. And this is where I encourage you, at the end of this, maybe for a brief discussion, because case studies and examples are the best learning places. The stuff that I'm sharing with you here is the sum total of the mistakes that I've made to date. So I'm trying to shape your own thinking so that you can make a new set of mistakes. When we talk about the market here, again, you have to remember in anything we're talking about here, we're talking about the very startup phase. We're talking about the scrappy startup, which is a step beyond the scrappy hackathon for 48 hours. It is working with that mentality. I don't really have anything, and how do I make it work? So that's why I have in here practice and the purpose and the policy. In some cases, people will tell you, oh, you need to follow the policy. Well, that's okay if you have a big market or you have a big business, but one of the big advantages of something that's a startup is you're agile, you're able to twist and turn, you're able to try something new. So that's what I would be encouraging you to, and that's what we'll talk a little bit about as we go through the next 5 weeks. How do you get some of what you've done into practice so that people can see it, even if it's not perfect? And you don't want it to be perfect. You want it to be in a state that it does something, but it gives people the appetite of trying some more. And that comes back up to that idea of a tapas, give people a taste of what you're doing. And when you come to marketing, it's very much about telling your story, creating a connection to start with. You'll often hear it talked about, people buy from people. That's never more true than in a startup or a new initiative. I didn't see all your presentations, but I saw a lot of them. And when you listen to the questions that the judges had, you could see where they were connecting and they were asking questions. And, out of those presentations, I think, the rest of the people in the room learned a lot as well. And people were learning together. And I know that that's something that Sahir very much encourages, that people learn from each other. So this is me digging a little bit deeper then into the meat piece. Think a little bit about what motivates you and what has shaped your motivation. At one stage during the hackathon, the very early stage actually on Friday evening, I was standing in the stairs watching a queue that was going up to a table that Sahir and his team are at registering everybody. And I thought to myself, that's a long queue of people queuing to start into 48 hours non-stop work and not get paid for it. So what motivated you to do that? That's one thing. But what motivates you to work with technology, work with this type of technology? What does the end game for you look like? In terms of a job, or is it in terms of making a difference? And these are very important questions. They're very important questions for me to be able to help you, to connect you in the right and guide you in the right direction. But they're also very important questions as you go along through an education or a research system. Because when you come out at the end of it, you are, every one of you are an entrepreneur, even if you don't set up your own business. You're going to sell yourself as an entrepreneur, even if you're going into a large multinational. You're selling yourself on the basis of what makes you unique and what allows you to make a difference. Then in the context of what does your ideal customer look like? Now, okay, that could be a commercial customer, but go back to the question earlier. If you're thinking of doing research, then your customer could be Science Foundation Ireland, it could be Enterprise Ireland, it could be the Higher Education Authority. Understand that customer piece. What do they look like? We all have a set of lens in terms of how we look at the world. And if you think back to in the hackathon challenges, you picked one, or your team picked one. Why did you pick them? Is it something that you saw happening? Is it something that you enjoy doing? Is it a need that you think is out there? Just don't overthink this stuff. Just scribble it down. And also then think to yourself, why should someone pay for that combination of your ambition, your skills, and the ideas that you're converting? And like, again, I say, don't overthink it. Just scribble it down. This isn't about creating a business plan. This is about creating a sense of direction. It's easy to come to the business plan piece afterwards. That's just a matter of totting the stuff up. But getting down to the fundamentals of who you are and why you're doing what you're doing is so important. Like I said to you, how do you see the world? What are the things that are happening in the world that annoy you? What are the things that are happening in the world that excite you? Because that usually gives you an idea of where, and you know, if you think about working on something over 48 hours, it's tough, it's a challenge. If you think about working on something for the rest of your life, or something that you want to work on a project for, in this case, 45 days, or it could be for 4.5 years. Understanding how you see the world and working it and aligning it to things that excite you or energize you is important, because that's what keeps you going. I'm sure we could ask Sahir this question many times, like, why do you put so much effort into organizing something like Hackathon and the team of people around him? I'm sure it doesn't make sense to the amount of time and effort that goes into the organization, but that's because he sees the world through a certain lens. Again, I don't want you to become economists, but be aware of the types of policies that are around the place. The reason I'm sitting here is because there's a policy, as well as the fact that I enjoy being here and I like this idea of using hackathons as an education. But the Irish government with the European Union have a policy that they will fund activities and people like myself for a period of time to allow the Education Institute, through education, research, and this type of activity, to engage more with the regional ecosystem. It's a way of transferring knowledge. It's a way of making a difference. And that's why the back of all this, we have a thing called a demonstration day. Remember I said at the start, I'm not from a technical background. I'm not from a science background, but when I became first aware of space technologies and specifically Earth observation about 8, 9 years ago. Immediately, the first thing I thought about was a spreadsheet in the sky. Data, and I don't understand why there isn't more use made of it in industry, but I'm coming to the conclusion, I suppose, in some ways that it's kind of known within a small niche piece of society, and individuals like yourselves that understand what this can do. We then have a kind of a perfect storm because not enough industry know about its capabilities, and as a result of which they they don't ask for it. The educational institutes don't prescribe it because they're not being asked for it. So we've got the perfect vacuum. And this is one of the reasons why the 45-day challenge is so important, because we now get an opportunity to demonstrate this to different parties that could see benefit. And some of the places I would like to see it demonstrated to is some of our own research units who definitely should be using a lot more of this technology, and also to a selective number of industry and maybe public bodies that could also be using it. But it's so new to their eyes, it's not to your eyes new, it's there for a long time. That when you don't know something, you don't know it, and you don't know what to do with it. So I've also put in here, just again, simple little things to ask yourself questions. What individuals inspire you and why? Whether we realize it or not, we are influenced by people who inspire us. We often, if we look at whether it's a business or something else, and you look a little bit into how they do things, it helps us to understand how we would like to do things. The same, I think, is to do with countries and cultures. There's traits, and these two questions, and the third one here, who says is who's in your tribe at the moment, probably tells you a lot about the values that you carry with yourself, and also the values that you want to carry into your business. There's an exercise that I've seen some people do before, which was, you're holding a dinner party and you've got to invite 10 guests, people who are living or not living. And that list of 10, you can then look at, well, why did you invite those people? And what did you admire about them? And the sum total of those 10 values is usually a good indicator of what you value and how you value it and how you operate. So the last piece here is this idea of a statement of entrepreneurial intention. And we can follow this up. I can give you a simple little template of this, but it's not complicated. It's an exercise I get people to do sometimes, is that, and don't take entrepreneurship here as just about setting up a business and making money. It's about anything to do with how you express your creativity. It could be in the format of a business. It could be in the format of a research paper. It could be in the format of volunteering for something. It could be in the format of, being an entrepreneur, where you find your way into a business, working on a business, and you make a difference within that business. Let's go back someplace along the line when I was moving stuff around. So talked about movement earlier. These slides convert themselves into a circle, because when you've done all this once, you have to go back then and start asking yourself the question, okay, what am I going to change now when you start off again? So there isn't a destination. There's a next step all the time. And sometimes people get frustrated with that. But my advice to you is enjoy it, because think about it more like a spiral staircase. The circles are moving up all the time. You're getting to meet new people. You get to meet a different set of challenges and a different set of values. And I think that's what we can achieve collectively over those 45 days. here in a second, I want to talk a little bit more about this. But fundamentally, what we do over the next 5 weeks is we take one of those. So you can see it here. You know, tonight I want to dig a little bit into what motivates you. And if you have questions or comments or observations, come back to me. In the meantime, we can follow it up with maybe some simple little articles or something, but also for you to email me back. My email is at the end of this. And next night, we talk about type of stakeholders. Who are the people that you want to connect with? And you might suggest the first, don't be afraid to come back and say, actually, I don't know who I should be connecting with. So what? Let's have a conversation then, and we'll start to find out who might some of these, because my intention would be that everybody would at least have an opportunity to share their idea with somebody that they think could be a stakeholder. And I can work with you. We put together a connective email that you can email to somebody, explain where you're coming from, where this came from. It was part of a hackathon. What are you doing? How are you doing it? And you think it might be of interest to them. And doing that, helps you to shape it, because the answers you'll get from those emails will help you give an insight into who might use this. And whatever you think they might use it for, there's a high probability it's going to be different than what you imagine in the first place. Sometimes it disappoints you, sometimes it excites you, but don't let it disillusion you. Just move on to the next person. And then on the third week, on the 29th of October, we'll dig a little bit deeper of the tactics of, how you make it happen. What I ask people is the small things that you can do that will make a big difference. And when I think back to it, my initial conversation with Sahir, I don't know whether I asked him that question, but whether I did or I didn't, he gave it to me very concise. The two small things he wanted me to do were a local challenge and maintain the 45 days after the hackathon weekend. So that's what we're doing with this. That's what we did with the local challenge. It won't be perfect, but it'll be a start and we'll learn from it. And the intention is it'll be better the next time around. And then when we look at the market on the fourth week, it's getting an idea of, I think the first 3 weeks you stay away from currency. You're not talking about. Then you're starting to understand a little bit of, okay, who's going to pay for what I do? And remember, we're not looking for this to be overly scientific. But what I'm trying to really get you to do there is to think about it. And then on the fifth week, it's about marketing. It's about selling your story. Because believe it or not, that's the piece that people may find difficult, but that's the piece that actually should be very authentic. That last marketing piece here should actually be a reflection and the refinement of what you've talked about and what you've reflected on from the first week. Who are you? What are you about? Why are you doing this? And what problem is it going to solve? My email address. And take inspiration from this guy, which I think is a good way when you're doing anything. You have a sense of direction and you're going to research it. And what you find out will be the foundation on the following day.
Great, Peadar. Thank you so much for such an insightful one. I think participants have the time to ask a few questions. Anyone? Use this time. This is great time. You can have a back and forth with Peadar and get his guidance, especially on the me part. Like I really like the personally like second time I was listening to him properly, and now every time I listen to him on the 5 M's, the framework, I learn so much. So much goes on in the head, and the way it's circular. and how you can position yourself only after getting an understanding of your positioning. Those, those things, uh, from the North Star and your factory of motivation, which you need to find. And yeah, it's insane how the framework is actually so concise. It's made so simplistic, but it it helps you go in that line of thought, which is very important to bring clarity. So yeah, use this time to ask anything to Pedal.
I don't know if Marcel is still with us or not, but if you are, Marcel, I don't know if that has answered your question.
He's here. I think he's switching on his sources. Mic is muted.
Yeah, that answered my questions. Is very interesting. I don't have any questions as of now, but I'll definitely think of something, and I'll let you know.
Can I just ask you one question, Marcel? That I spoke to you briefly after I think your presentation and stuff, and am I right in thinking when you hadn't used a lot of the Earth observation data before the weekend, or you had?
No, I
You
haven't.
had.
No, and
Okay,
actually, I became a bit inspired by this topic, and I really want to pursue this direction of research, of using space data to um, design frameworks for different businesses and stuff like that.
okay. And the reason I'm asking the question, Marcel, because I had a similar experience when somebody showed it to me. Now, obviously, I wasn't using it, but when somebody showed me what was possible. And what I would say to everybody in this is that I think there is hundreds of thousands and millions of people around the world that would have the same reaction when they find out what's possible. And in some cases, you know, they might never find out what's possible. But guys like yourselves and everybody here, you're in the enviable position of being able to show them some of the things that's possible. And in some cases, obviously, Marcel, you see some value to it, and you see so much value to it that you're saying, I want to actually dedicate my research time to this. So that's the reason why I was very pleasantly surprised when I spoke to you. Um, you know, you're for somebody who hadn't ever used it, and in 48 hours got up on a stage to explain something. And also, what I remember was you had the courage to tweak the challenge, if I understand it correctly. You put a wind twist
Yeah,
on it as opposed to a weather twist.
yes, because my current research is on wind energy. Wind energy, yeah. And I had some knowledge and I applied that to the challenge, and something nice
Okay.
came out of it.
So I don't need to tell people if people just pick up on what you did there. You took a chance. You took a risk. Somebody could have come back to you and said, look, oh, that's not what we asked for. But that's what I mean by a business modeling, you know. And that's also what I mean by, you obviously someplace decided I'll enjoy it more if I'm using something that I know a little bit about. And whether you decided or not, it also meant that you were able to present it better, which also meant that you connected with the audience better. So that's why I put so much emphasis on the me piece. You're already doing it. Because if we have to try and work on things if you're trying to innovate something that you don't believe in, you won't stay at it. And that's why it's not, if some people here, might have worked on something and they might have decided they wanted to do something different with it or tweak it a little bit. I think these 45 days or 5 weeks, take time to explore it and come back to us with questions, come back to us with confusion. You know, if you are confused about anything I say or anything that's about your project, then make sure you stay in contact with us.
Great. Anyone else? Any questions for Peadar? And like he said, like just don't overthink these things. There's a lot of analysis paralysis that can happen. Just scribble it out and scribble it down and write it down to him if you think there is a question. Yes. If my teammates do not want to do the 45-day challenge, would that be a problem if I want to go ahead? We discussed this briefly, Pedro, but what do you think? Of course, like we can't be stopping anyone, right?
Yeah, I think we don't stop anybody. Sahir and myself had a conversation. Like the main thing here is people get to develop themselves and their thinking. So these first 2 weeks is really to find out what are the anomalies that might crop up. You know, for example, if one person out of a team wants to work on it, then let's do that. And by the end of next week's session, we'll have a good understanding of how many people we have that are committed into this, and then we'll coordinate it accordingly. So what I mean by that is we might end up with an individual presenting an idea rather than a team presenting an idea. But I think in the spirit of what we're trying to do within the 45 days, that's the right thing to do.
Sean, I hope it answered your question. It shouldn't be a problem. Perfect.
I'm going to ask Joseph to give us a little bit of insight if he can. Are you able to talk, Joseph, or maybe you're?
Yes, yes, I'm able to talk. So,
I have a question. Well, maybe you have a question if you have, first of all, but if not, I have a question for you.
okay. Well, I was discussing with Nandini about the project, and we're kind of like it's an individual thing, one person to go forward. And I was thinking, okay, can we use the project we submitted? Can we use the same project for the 45-day challenge, or it has to be the one we submitted on GitHub? Or so, well, on discussing, we both agreed that we can as well use the one we submitted for the NASA, right, for this project. So that's what we are working on. We are intending that we would go ahead and, in fact, right now in front of me, it's a soldering iron. So we are working on that currently to bring it forward to this 45-day challenge and show it take it to the different centers, different positions, floodplains that we are working on, and see it working in action for you to see. I think that would be very helpful already. So
okay, so just to clarify, yeah, I mean, the intention here is the project that you worked on is what you for the NASA challenge is what you will take forward. And you know the question I had for you, because I'm familiar with some other projects that you've worked on, not necessarily through a hackathon process, but when you reflect back on, I suppose, I think we had a discussion with Joseph, maybe first of all, maybe 6 months ago, or it was originally I think it was down in Limerick, but towards the start of the summer, you were on a student Think project, which was kind of removed from the classroom. And what would you say, and you had the opportunity to sit into what in essence was creating a commercial type environment or a entrepreneurial environment for 3 months. Just what would you see as being different for those 3 months?
Yeah, so in those 3 months, we did a customer discovery, went out there to find out if there's a need for the solution, if there are people out there that need it, who want to take advantage of it. And in those 3 months, I could find out, together with those who were with me, that while this solution is very applicable in terms of research, it makes use of satellite technology, makes use of AI and all that, the community are not ready to like it's the knowledge gap. There's a huge knowledge gap about the implementation, about how it's to be beneficial to them. So it therefore brings to point that you might have a solution, you might have a problem, but the society may not be ready to accept it yet, to use it. They might not even know that they need your solution. So you go out there with your solution and they just don't know what you're talking about. So, so that's why that's what I learned in between those 3 months, is that why the solution is brilliant, why it's very helpful in terms that it's going to save money, it's not going to help people make more money from their energy. Yet, apart from the infrastructure, the Irish infrastructure not being able to integrate such a solution, the people who we built this solution for do not even understand how the solution works. So that's what I learned. And I believe in TUS Works, this is where you get to assess the viability and also have an hint of the validity of your solution. So that's it. Thank you.
And thanks for that, Joseph, because you've reiterated again, like, the dilemma that we all have on this screen is, it's not as if we're introducing a new product. We're actually introducing a new utility. And I think, Marcel, that's what happened in the hackathon weekend. You found that new utility, and all of a sudden you kind of go, okay, this is amazing. What can I do with it? So, big challenge that we all have is, how do we get people to taste more of what we're doing? And that's coming back to a demonstration day. And this is where, as I get to know more of who's on the screen and who's participating, I'm going to try and curate the researchers and the industry people that we bring to that day. Now, in a handful of cases, there's people that I would have in mind that are already using it. But this type of technology is a little bit like when electricity was first introduced, that people didn't know what to do with it. And there's a kind of an anecdotal story in Ireland that when an elderly gentleman was asked, did he think of the electricity and the electric light, he said it was very handy because he could use it to find the oil lamp. So while he was using it, it wasn't achieving its full potential. And that's a message that I would get like you to take away from today, that you're immersed in something you just take for granted, but it has a huge potential, but there's a delicate process. And the other thing, you're all involved in a very innovative environment. What you also have to imagine with innovation, it also introduces change for people, and people don't like changing. And so just what Joseph has reiterated, and I think Marcel's experience, don't underestimate, the power of knowing that, because if I listen to what you said, Joseph, and I know we had this conversation where I had to explain to you, you need to go and talk to some of these people, because some particular companies write things, about being innovative and having smart systems. And when Joseph described to me what a smart system was, I said, I'm not sure that's what they mean. And I know he came back to me a couple of weeks later and said, yeah, you're right. They don't mean the same thing as when I say smart. So these are some of the challenges, that you face when you go from 48-hour hackathon. Remember, the big advantage of the 48-hour hackathon is you don't have to convince yourself. The real fun happens when you come outside that and you have to go out and convince the rest of the world. It's really what's in the middle of that diagram with the, I don't know what you call a shape with 4 sides. Someone come in here. Is it a hexagon? No? Sides.
4 sides, quadrilateral,
And then we've got 5. Have we got 5 sides on our
pentagon.
pentagon? Yeah. But so that's what's going on inside in the middle. That's why you go around in circles. Because you have to, if you think about it, I want you guys to make sure why you're doing it, because you're going to have to convince people. And I'm also going to tell you, if you have to convince them too much, they're not the right people, move on to the next person. So entrepreneurship, whether you're using it for business or anything else, I don't think it's a science, it's an art. So if it was a science, someone could just pay for it and it would be magic. But this is where now you start taking your knowledge of science and bring the art of engagement, communication. That's like, I'm sure there's a book about how to run a hackathon that Sahir and his team could write tomorrow. But that's off the years of experience of putting it together, what worked, what didn't work, change it again. I'm sure he already has a little list of what he'd do differently next year. Any more questions? Confused anybody? I'm sorry.
I think that was very clear, Peadar. Iterations and just navigating this chaos and making it organized chaos is what is needed. So I think
Yeah.
people should just go at it. And your question, the questions which you like, uh, I hope people took screenshots when he was presenting, but we'll be we'll be posting this YouTube, this whole recorded webinar as a YouTube video. So you can check the questions he was talking about. Those questions are very important to answer and get clarity on yourself, your ideal customer, your end game. Why should someone pay for you? These kind of questions are where you can start thinking and get that clarity. But I think it was such a knowledge-packed session, Peter. I think people need to deconstruct it and start working on it as well. So if there are no questions, we can wrap it up slightly early as well, and we can get started on posting this on YouTube. What do you think, Pedro?
Yeah.
Perfect.
I
Okay.
see a question here.
So yeah, what sort of deliverables are you expected to provide? Pedro, do you want to take this?
Look, guys, exactly. You've answered the question. It's up to you. When you're in this journey of exploration, you have to become the leader of your own destiny. So I was going to answer that to say the deliverables are your deliverables that you decide. I'm here to help you to shape them. And I might call in Sahir, the technical aspects of some of the team, but I think you've answered it there for yourself. It's up to you.
Yep. Perfect.
Good to talk to you guys, and good to be part of this. And I'm looking forward to the excitement of surfing the confusion, because that's what comes with anything that's innovative.
So we'll wrap it up for today, everyone. Thank you so much for joining in, and we'll see you next week. Take care. Bye bye.
See you guys.
Thank you.